Okay, so we've finished inputting all of our tracks. That's a very important part of the project completed. We now move on to the sort of finishing up stages where we're going to talk about adding stereo field, then adding effects, and then balancing the project up so we've got a nice final product. Stereo field. Okay, now I would have talked through in lesson what stereo is, how it works, and I'm going to show you how you will apply that to different tracks in this, because different tracks will need different approaches. A very important resource that you're going to need is found on my classroom walls. Okay, you will find this resource on Google Classroom. You'll also find it, as I said, on the classroom walls. There's one in the control room, there's one in E6 itself, and this is a panning display. This shows you the traditional stereo locations for different instruments. Okay, and remember, it is done like a clock face. So the kick drum of a drum kit should traditionally be positioned dead center. Okay, 12 o'clock on the clock, meaning that we're not actually going to do anything to that track, because if you look here, you will see that by default, these are the pan controls. These are all set straight up to 12 o'clock. So we don't need to do anything with that. But some instruments, for example, these rhythm guitar tracks on our clock face, they are shown at 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to set the pan controls of various different instruments to different places using this display. So let's go in and look at the project. We're going to start at the top and work our way down. Nice and straightforward. So we start with the bass parts, and I've already just said that bass instruments, and no I haven't, I've said that kick drums stay at the center. Well, that's the same for all bass heavy instruments. If you look at the display, if I can get it back up again, if you look at the display, you'll notice that the bass guitar is set to straight up 12 o'clock. So we're not going to touch that at all. We're going to leave both of our two layers alone. However, we've got three different electric guitar parts. And you can see that generally guitars are set quite wide. We've got one at 10 and 2. We've got one at 9 and 3. That's an acoustic guitar, admittedly, but still the same sort of logic applies. So we want some width in our stereo fields so that they sound wider for the electric guitar parts. And I'm going to start with this one because this is the most important one. Now we've got two layers at the moment, but they're effectively the same track that we have created. So if I just set, if I set one to 20 and one to -20, okay, that is stereo field work. That is placing them wider. However, you're moving the same part in two different directions, and that's not what we want. So I'm going to set them back to 0 for the time being. And what I'm going to do is, because I want to set them both two ways, I'm going to make a duplicate of them. So I'm going to click on new track with duplicate settings. I'm going to call the top one right. I'm going to add a little R to it. I'm going to call the bottom one left. Okay, and I'm going to do the same with this one here. Top layer right. Top layer left. Okay, so duplicated the tracks. Now I need to duplicate everything on the tracks. So for the bottom one, I'm going to drag and select all of this, copy it, put the playhead at the beginning, select the right track, and paste it in. I've now got a perfect duplicate of that track. I can do the same thing up here. Copy it, select the right track, paste it in. So at the moment, they're just exact duplicates. But what I'm going to do is the right track, I'm going to pan to the right. And I'm going to go about 10 o'clock on the dial, which is about +20. And for the other one, I'm going to go, did I say 10 o'clock? I meant 2 o'clock. For the other one, I am going to go 10 o'clock on the dial. And there we go. So I've gone to the left by -20 and to the right by +20. I'm going to do exactly the same thing with the other layer. Okay. And that just gives us a bit more width in the listening. You should have headphones on to be listening to this. Okay, now the balance is still off, but that already is giving us a bit more of a sense of width on that main guitar part. But we're not going to just do it with this one. We're going to do it with the other guitar layers as well. I'm going to go even wider for these. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to duplicate each part. Okay, I'm going to call the first one right and the second one left. I'm going to duplicate this one as well. this one right. Being really careful with attention to detail, because remember that's what we're looking for all the time. Nice and precise. Okay, going to need the actual parts themselves. Copy it. Make sure you're in the right part. Duplicate it. Copy it. Make sure you're in the right part and duplicate it. There we go. Now for these I'm going to go really wide. Okay, I'm going to go 3 o'clock, which is 35, and 9 o'clock. Here we go. And 35 and minus 35. Probably should mention how I'm actually working these controls. If you put your mouse cursor on the control and hold down the mouse button, if you move your cursor up, it will go one way. If you move it down, it will go the other way. You can, if you prefer, you can actually type the value into there if you double click on the control. I would prefer to do it with actually using the dial. So 21. We can do anything if we put our minds to it. Take your whole life, then you put a line through it. My love is ours if you're willing to take it. Give me your now it's possible, okay, less experienced ears, you might listen to that, you might say, so that sounds no different. Okay, stereo field is always quite subtle, but trust me, that is already starting to sound better in terms of width. And the last one, which is a single track, I'm going to duplicate that, and I'm going to go electric guitar right, whoops, same as before, and electric guitar left. And this one I'm going to throw even wider. I'm going to go super wide on this one. I'm going to go all the way right and all the way left, because that's quite an atmospheric ambient sound. So we've got 3 completely different stereo locations. We can do anything if we put our minds to it. Take your whole life, then you put a line through it. My love is ours if you're willing to take it. Give me your heart, 'cause I ain't gonna break it. So come away, start it today. Starting a life together at a different place. I've just realised I've messed up that automation, haven't I? Yep, that was silly. Shouldn't have done that. Should not have. That's okay. It's fixed it. I forgot that we had the first half of that set later. And that's all we need to do for the stereo field of the guitar tracks. Let's keep moving ourselves down. So electronic drums, that's the original. We don't touch that. We don't need to touch any of the originals because they will have already been panned when they were created. We're only doing the tracks that we created ourselves. So the kick drum, we've already said, stays dead center, otherwise it gets very distracting. Now the subtle ticking, okay, I think the subtle ticking would benefit from being a little bit wider, so I'm going to duplicate that. That's interesting. Why isn't that called subtle ticking? I'm sure I changed all of these. Sure I did that. Things haven't saved as I was expecting. Never mind. Anyway, there we go. This should say kick. Right, so the subtle ticking I'm going to duplicate. And as before, I'm going to select everything on that track. Copy. Make sure I'm in the right track. Paste it in. Exact duplicate. So let's go up to you. Let's go 35 again. And minus 35. There we go. Ah, that's made a big difference. I like that a lot. The subtle ticking is now even subtler. It's now less in your face because it's not directly in the center. It's less aware. Snare drums usually stay at the center, and I'm going to leave the fill at the center as well. Moving down, don't need to do any of these blue tracks at all because they're all part of the original. Bass synth, bass instrument stays at the start. Sorry, stays at the 12 o'clock. So let's do both of these. We're going to do the synth parts. New track with duplicate settings. Main part right. Main part left. Okay, refer back to our display. Now, it says piano, but we can treat piano and synth as pretty similar. And they're saying quite wide. We've got 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock, or 2 o'clock and 10 o'clock. There is no strict guidance on this. If you want to put something in a bizarre place, then go for it. These are only guides. Why have I just opened Skype? Don't want Skype. These are the let's get rid of that before it opens fully. There we go. Sorry, what was I saying? Yeah, these are only guide locations. So if you've got string instruments in your track, try them there. But if you don't like them, put them somewhere else. You know, if you've got, we haven't really got hi-hat in our track. We've got the subtle ticking instead, which I put quite wide. But if you want to try it wider than that, it's up to you. This is only a guide. There is no wrong with this, so long as the mix still sounds nice. So we said 10 and 2. So let's try that. Let's try 20 and minus 20. And then the descant notes, I'm going to put in the same position because they're part of the same parts. So I'm going to go, whoops, capital letter. I'm going to go right and left. And let's do the last one while I'm here. It also makes you look like you've got a lot more tracks, which is a good thing. So there we go. We said 20 and negative 20 and 20 and negative 20. Now, we haven't actually put the parts in yet, so let's do that now. Copy, play ahead to the beginning, select the right track, paste in. Copy, select the right track, and paste in. And there we go. Let's see what that sounds like. We're definitely going to want a lot more volume on that synth when we get there later. Okay, and that is a basic overview of how to do stereo field using sort of traditional locations on a sequenced track. Bass instruments, remember, stay at the center. Everything else, have a bit of a play around. If you have got vocals, if you've recorded vocals, then they traditionally stay in the middle as well. But nearly all of you will be using a commercial vocal track, so you don't need to worry about that. And that is stereo field. So it's quite a straightforward episode, this one. Just make sure that you use all of the resources. Make sure that you refer to that panning track and we'll be all good. We, of course, need to evidence it. So I'm going to take a top of the mix shot. I'm going to take a bottom of the mix shot. And I'm going to go and duplicate screenshot 18. I'm going to call this 19 and 20, nice round numbers. Into the center. Now remember, it's absolutely fine to have multiple. Now, is that top? Yep, that's the top of the mix. And here's the bottom of the mix. Try and make them roughly the same size. There we go. So screenshots 19 and 20. Here I am working on the stereo field of my track. I have used pretty traditional locations for my stereo field. I have placed the bass instruments and the kick at the center, but I have created width using instruments such as the guitars and the synth parts. In order to do this, I had to duplicate the parts that I wanted to set wider. To do this, I simply copy and pasted. And then used the pan controls to set them wide. I used the clock face analogy as my reference. I am really happy with the stereo field. Some parts in particular, dear, like the subtle ticking, now sound much better in the mix. Okay, there we go. And there, ladies and gentlemen, is stereo field. It's very simple. One slide will do a brief explanation just saying that you've done it, saying why you've done it, saying the resources that you followed will do nicely. And that takes care of stereo field. On now to our next video. I shall see you there to talk about more effects.